don't make the food or serve the food. I don't even send out the member statements. My job, it's a little bit like being the conductor of the orchestra. There's a big orchestra in front of you. I don't actually play an instrument, but I see that orchestra, and if it's a little bit out of sync, if maybe somebody is leaving that orchestra, I need to make sure you get the right person to come back in to fill it and make sure that it ticks and it all works together.
Hello, and welcome everybody to a very special edition of the Links Golf Club podcast called Building LinksDAO. This is a series where we dissect what has made great clubs of the past so that we can build the best golf club of the future together. That means understanding what actually makes a club great. It's not just the course, but the culture, the experience, and the day-to-day operations. Today, to that end, we're going to be talking to GMs from both sides of the Atlantic, John Caven and Bert MacKay. John is a general manager of St. George's Golf and Country Club in Toronto, one of the most respected clubs in North America. In fact, Top 100 Golf Courses has it as the number 2 ranked course in Canada and number 67 in the world. Bert is general manager of Spey Bay Golf Club, a coastal links on the northern coast of Scotland that's now being reinvented by a global community and a deeply committed team to make it one of the most special destination courses in Scotland. We'll talk about what GMs are actually responsible for, what separates good clubs from great ones, and what each side of the Atlantic can learn from each other. You are going to love this episode, so let's meet Bert and John. All right, to kick things off, let's meet the people at the center of today's conversation. John and Bert, they run clubs in different countries, different continents, very different models. One is sort of a very highly structured, championship-tested club in a major city in Canada. The other historic coastal links in Scotland, now being run by a small team with support from a global membership. Both approach the job differently, but also similarly. Both care deeply about what makes a golf club worth belonging to. So, gentlemen, thanks so much for showing up. We talked about your bios a little bit in the intro, but John, I'll start with you. How did you end up at St. George's? What was your path there?
I think it always starts, for most of us, it starts with a passion for golf. Played a lot of golf when I was a young kid. My father played golf, and I think getting me into the game allowed him to play more. So that's really how it started there. I became an assistant pro, then a head assistant, a head professional. And then I probably, not reluctantly, but I got an opportunity to be an operations director. Coming from Scotland to Canada was really through networks, which I think is a massive thing in this industry. It's a worldwide game, but it's actually a very small network of people that you get to know and you understand. And that's 8 years now that I've been in Canada. So it's quite believe that I'm into my mid-50s now. I still think I'm only 35 and I'm nearly 55. But so it's a passion for golf to really where I've got to.
Great. Yeah, I can't wait to learn more about St. George's. I've talked to Bert about it. Obviously, I've looked a lot online, but it seems like a very, very, very cool place. Bert, how about you? How did you come to Spey Bay?
Very similar to John. Everybody has this passion for golf and you want to be the next Tiger Woods at the time, but the realization is you just don't have the talent. So I kind of got into golf, was very fortunate. I worked at the same club as John, worked for John for a number of years. And then we didn't grow apart. John moved abroad and I moved to Northern Ireland and eventually came to Spey Bay. So it's, similar paths. I think we all want to be the next Tiger Woods, but the realization is if you can work in golf and be part of something pretty cool, then that's not a bad substitute.
Absolutely. So what about, as far as your clubs now, maybe John, I'll start with you. If someone visited your club tomorrow, what's one detail or, special thing that they'd notice that really captures the spirit of that place?
I think to start off with, we've got a world-class golf course, and it's interesting because people will see the place somewhere, oh, that's a world-class course. Now, Bert and I were very fortunate to work at Loch Lomond for a number of years, and both of us would have played, in fact, Bert would have played it more than me, but I'd probably played Loch Lomond at least 100 times, and it was a world-class golf course. And St. George's is a world-class course. the overall thing that you would get the feeling for at St George's is that it's all about the golf experience. We have indoor simulators, and that's it. We don't have a gym, we don't have a pool, we don't have tennis courts. It's all focused around the golf experience, and that's why somebody wants to join St George's, because it is all about golf. The golfing IQ of the membership, and that's nothing to do with handicaps. The members are into their golf. They want to get better. They want to understand it. They want to get around the golf course in under 4 hours. There's a lot of culture around the best golfing experience, and I think that's what not stands us out and makes us any better than anyone else, but that's our unique point really, is that it's about the golfing experience at St George's.
Great. So someone visited Spey Bay, Bert. What's the first thing that would really stand out to them from just like a cultural perspective?
I think it's very true to its location more than anything. You have a very rugged landscape in the Highlands of Scotland, and that's ultimately what you're going to find. You're not going to find this pristine, manicured links course, whether it's at Portrush or Royal County Down, that's a very polished article. We're not that, and we don't pretend to be that. That's so you are coming to have the rough, wild experience in a family environment. Ultimately, we have a small team, so you're guaranteed that you'll see me either on the first tee or out in the golf course or in the clubhouse. And as I say, with only 8-10 staff, you're going to see 9 of the staff on any given day.
Absolutely. That is definitely one of the things that stands out. And I think one of the fun things about being there, I mean, last time I was there, we played golf together. In between, you were serving drinks, like it is a fun atmosphere. So what's one thing sort of last couple of months that really made you proud about your club?
So Spey Bay, I mean, I think the fact that our staff, because it's such a small team, are working across departments. So like you've got, Louis in the bar is out watering greens at night. The guys in the green staff are working night shift just now because we're so dry. So this is the driest start to any year that Scotland's ever seen, to the point where we've had our sprinkler systems on almost full tilt since February, which is unheard of in Scotland. So the proudest thing is the fact that the team are happy to work across departments more than anything. Obviously, we've finished our new halfway hut. We open our new golf course on Saturday, so there's a lot of milestones that are happening. But I think the fact that the staff are happy to work across departments is the proudest thing we can have.
Great, John. What about you? What makes you proud about St George's?
Something, I think it's almost the exact same as Bert, but on a different scale. We have about 40 permanent members of staff that work at the club all year round. That's, we get a proper winter, so we do have a couple of greens crew that stay on and do the snow clearing and get the car park cleared and stuff. But we've got food and beverage, which is open all year round. We've got the pros that work all year round because we've got the indoor golf centre. But we've only got 40 permanent members of staff. We have about another 30 staff that go down to part-time hours in the winter time. That's mainly food and beverage. But right now, here we are towards the second half, end of May almost. I think at the moment we've got 192 staff on, which takes a lot of managing. But actually, I think the cultural feel of what we've got, and I think that leads from some fantastic head of the department and the recruitment and seasonal staff coming back. And if you can get that right, Bert knows this as well as anyone, if you can get the staff ticking in the background, going in the back door, then the members, the customers that are walking in and out the front door are going to see the benefit of it and will get reap the benefits. So I'm very proud of the culture that we've got here at St George's, and that doesn't mean to say that we can't keep improving it, but I think getting that team together, the exact same as what Bert's doing, doesn't matter what the scale of it is. I think we as managers can really see that. It gives us a lot of great feeling about coming into work every day.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, kind of already one of the themes, as we're establishing this and trying to learn here is, you have to get hiring right. And that's the same for a company. It's the same for a golf course. But the fact that both of you mentioned that is something that you're proud of and really makes your club, unique and work well is not surprising to me, right? Like every time you visit a club, or if you're a member at a club, I don't know if either of you would use the word hospitality to describe sort of the experience that you're driving, like, you would at a hotel, but it's the individuals who go above and beyond to create a memorable experience that really makes, a club stand apart in my mind. So I'll take that note as kind of our first theme here, but let's, as you move in, sort of we have a sense now, sort of who both of you are, sort of, where you come from, what your clubs are like. Let's talk about sort of what you actually do. I think probably some people could guess or assume what a GM does, but sort of what's the reality? What takes up most of your time? What does your day-to-day look like? Bert, I'll start with you.
I think every day is different, and I think that's the fun thing about being in golf is that you don't know what's coming through the door. I mean, yes, there's a tee sheet, and for any golf club I've ever been at, there's when we were at Loch Lomond, there was a lot of structure around. You knew the arrivals of the day, you knew who was playing, what time they were playing, but ultimately the needs of those people change depending on who they are, and at any point in time somebody can drop in, and it's no different here. So a lot of my time is taken up with our international membership, in a good way, in the fact that we have several thousand overseas members here that have never been to Scotland. So trying to point them in the right direction of, like, come and play Spey Bay, but while you're here, you should be playing near Dunbar, you should be playing Capo Highlands, Royal Dornoch, and all the other golf courses that go with it. So, want of a better word, a tour guide and tour operator. I know I've booked this year to date 32 trips for anything from a 2-ball to a 12-ball, including transportation, dinners, different experiences. So, bizarrely, the thing that's taken the most time for me is ultimately being a tour operator. But
you're very good at it.
Yeah, sure. We're trying hard.
John, what about you? What's your day-to-day look like?
It's interesting because when you get to an organization with this amount of people, the crazy thing is that the higher up the org chart you go, sometimes you get further away from what brought you into the game. So I'm lucky. I probably play golf once a week, which is very nice. Play with different members every week. But I'm not on the golf course that often. I've got a fantastic super who doesn't need these handhelds. He just knows so much more than I do about that. I've got an unbelievable food and beverage team. The executive chef's been here for 17 years. I've got a new controller that came in a couple of years ago, and she's a lot younger than me, so her IT skills and how she makes it all work behind the scenes is unbelievable. So I feel so privileged about the team that I've got here. So as a general manager, as easy as it sounds, I don't welcome people. I don't work in the locker room. I don't pull the bags out. I'm not the starter. I don't cut the greens. I don't make the food or serve the food. I don't even send out the member statements. My job, it's a little bit like being the conductor of the orchestra. There's a big orchestra in front of you. I don't actually play an instrument, but I see that orchestra, and if it's a little bit out of sync, if maybe somebody is leaving that orchestra, I need to make sure you get the right person to come back in to fill it and make sure that it ticks and it all works together. And if you get that right, to some people, very honest, they might look at my job and think, you know what, it's a pretty easy job. And when things are going really, really well, it's the easy is the wrong word, but it's a very comfortable job. But then you've also got to be there when things are not going that well, or you have to make those changes. So I think it becomes, I always think sometimes by the time you get to the top of the org chart in the bigger organizations, you almost feel like the HR manager as well. You're working with the staff and the members because they're stakeholders, they're owners here. And you're trying to keep people, you're listening, you're gauging the pulse, you're jumping in and out when it's needed, you're giving focus. Sometimes you're giving a pat in the back, sometimes you're maybe giving a kick up the backside to someone, but you're there to make sure that everything's running smoothly and effectively. And if you get it working that way, it can look like a very comfortable, smooth job. But I assure you, behind the scenes, there's always something.
Totally. What's something that y'all either think about or worry about every day that no one else would notice? That's just like always top of mind to you, but no one else has any idea that it's even going on.
I think for me, presentation just now, obviously we're going through this transition of going from what was a classic links golf course that was failing, and it was failing for a reason, for investment. So on a day-to-day, first, everybody that comes through the door at Spey Bay is a potential member moving forward. So it's the presentation of the clubhouse itself, the presentation of the golf course. Obviously, look, David and the team, incredibly talented, and the golf course is moving. But, right now we're going through such a dry period, as we alluded to earlier on, that the presentation still has to be right. They're still being charged a premium green fee to come and play Spey Bay. We are the new kids on the block. We are doing something completely different. So, but the fundamentals are first impressions, whether it's you walk into a restaurant, a hotel, anywhere, first impressions mean everything. So, that still hasn't changed for me. First impressions of Spey Bay is certainly always on my mind.
John, what about you?
It sounds strange. Do I have a concern every day? Like the strange thing that I've either got a concern or a worry about? I honestly don't. I think my biggest thing is trying to make sure that I become front and centre to as many areas as possible. I'm sitting in my office just now, and it's so easy to sit in front of computers these days, looking at communications that are coming in, checking things, following up. Before you know it, there's 2 hours gone. It's too easy to be stuck in an office as a general manager. And there are times that I introduced a new thing, as usual. I stole a good idea from somebody. It wasn't my idea. Is that I come in on a Saturday, normally Saturday mornings up till about lunchtime, or Monday to Friday, and a Saturday I come in till lunchtime. And every Saturday I look at my diary for the week ahead or my calendar. And I block times out where I just call it member time. And normally it's at least 3 times a week. It might be anywhere between an hour and 2 hours each block, where I just get out the office. Sometimes I jump on a golf cart, go out to the practice range, go and walk about our upper veranda, which on a Wednesday we've got men's league on, women's league's a Thursday, put blocks in and just spend time with members. And that's not just to smoosh and be nice and be seen. It's actually the nuggets or the pieces of information that you get from members that are not maybe that prepared to pick up the phone or send you an email, because it's not that important, they don't think. But you just hear a little comment, and if you get it early, you can act upon it. If you hear it more than once, so it turns out maybe there's more members are talking about it. So my biggest, it's not a concern, but certainly a direction is to be front and centre and to be engaged with the membership and be present. I think.
It's funny, I come from working in technology, right? And one of the people very early on, when you become a manager at a technology company, you read Andy Gove, who was the CEO of Intel. And one of the things that he talks about is almost exactly what you said, is like the primary responsibility of a manager is information gathering. And you have to be, whether it's a factory or a golf course, whatever, you have to be out there and you have to be listening. So I think you both sort of touched on probably answers to this question, but I do want to ask it because I'm curious. As we talk about great clubs, a lot of that has to do with leadership, right? And so what do you think the difference between a good or a bad GM and a great GM is? What are the characteristics that stand out there?
That's a great question, isn't it? I mean, that's a big question.
we're asking the big questions here. We're trying to learn.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll go back to the beginning, and we've maybe touched on it, maybe not directly. Basically, it starts off with recruitment, because if you can recruit the right teams and you get the right people in place, you don't need to manage them. You just need to lead them. If you get people that are maybe, so there's three sides to, I think, a staff member. When you're recruiting, there's the IQ, there's the EQ, and then there's the AQ, which is the one that I've learned about recently. So IQ is they need the given skills. They need to be able to cut the greens, use the sprayer, give a golf lesson, work in the kitchen, actually know what they're doing. Even working, in the IT side of it, in the office administration, they've got to have the skills to do the job. And that's a given. You must get somebody who's got skills. The EQ is the emotional intelligence. Can they work around? When golf club terms, we're a big business. In business terms, we're a small business, even with the amount of staff we've got. So we need staff that can work across departments, sit next to somebody and work together, appreciate and be respectful. So the EQ. The AQ is around the agility. How flexible are they? And that's where Bert really needs it, because he's got a smaller crew. So he needs somebody that is prepared to jump behind the bar, go out and do this, whatever the job is to do it. And we need that as well, because we pivot quite a lot, whether it's events that we do. So if I can, not just me, but if I've got managers that know how to recruit properly, and it goes all the way right down to the seasonal staff that you're bringing in, and you can tick hopefully those 3 boxes, IQ, EQ, and AQ, then I think you're a hell of a long way to you can lead those teams, and you don't micromanage. You let them go on with it, and you tell them, go and shine. Be the best version of yourself every day and have fun doing it. Now, if I'm sitting there looking at my team and I don't have confidence in them and I've not recruited right, then what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to manage them. And a lot of people don't like being managed. They want to be, certainly if they're good at their job, just let them flourish. So that's quite a general description of how I see it. But I think it's starting off with that recruitment side of it.
I don't disagree, John. I think, it's funny. Obviously, I worked for John for a number of years. And to be fair, I think that the ethos is still the exact same. And, I was pretty fortunate. I had obviously John had to trust to make sure that I could do the job. But once I was able to do the job, it was, well, go and do it. Like, whatever you think's right, go and do it. And I'm kind of the exact same here now. I mean, it's funny because I'm trying to hide what's behind me just now because it's member guest weekend. And we all know, remember Guest Weekend, that the GM's office becomes a storeroom, and mine is no different. But even like the bar staff, like, because we're such a small team, they're doing the handouts, they're doing the player gifts. We wrote the menu as a team. Every element this weekend, okay, I signed off on it, but the team basically have put together what they think is going to be a great weekend. And ultimately is, if you have the staff buy-in at any level, any organization, they're going to deliver it because it's their idea. And all I have done is signed off and said, yeah, I like this, or no, I don't, or, let's make that more in line with a budget. But ultimately this weekend, we've got 4 staff in today, and they're running around prepping for Friday because everybody's on. And I literally, if this had been me 15 years ago, I would have been the headless chicken running around, and John would have been sat there going, oh, at least it's been done. But, it's kind of nice to kind of take that step back and go, everybody's pulling their weight, doing the bits. David and the boys are doing some stuff on the golf course that they wouldn't normally do because obviously we're changing markers. So everybody's kind of bought into this idea. And I think if you empower your staff, it's definitely the way to go.
And Bert, and you know as well as I do, if you get that EQ and the EQ part right, they actually love doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's team player. If you get the people in that are the team players and they appreciate what they're doing, and they get respect from their peer groups and the members at the end of this member guest weekend. It's fun. Yes, you're tired. You're working 12, 14-hour days, but you feel so rewarded for it. And if you get that recruitment right, the team that you bring in will produce amazing results, regardless of what level you're working at or how many staff you've got. And you're great at that, about recruiting the right people. That's what it comes down to.
I think that
Absolutely.
It's clear to me from what y'all are talking about, obviously we're talking about great clubs, but we can't talk about great clubs without talking about great GMs. And both the great GMs that I'm talking to right now are talking about hiring great people, empowering them to do the job, and also having the ability to step back. I know for me, whenever I, sort of in my career, as I moved up through leadership positions, the hardest thing to do is delegate, right? Because usually you get promoted because you're really good at your individual contributor job, right? And so you know how to do that job, you're excellent at it, so you get promoted, and immediately your first thing is like, why do these people suck at doing the thing that I was really good at? Like, that's like the bad part of your brain is telling you that. And so I need to micromanage them so that their outcomes match what my outcomes were. But that's not how it works, right? That's the easiest way to develop a failing team and a failing company or a failing golf club. And so I think when you allow for people to do a job, get excited about doing that job, that's where they really create those sort of like unforgettable experiences, right? And, Bert, you talked about first impressions. And, a lot of the time, especially for Spey Bay, the only reason why you hear about a golf course typically is either the golf course was amazing or there was some spectacular experience that they had that immediately they want to talk about it, right? They just immediately want to go tell their friends, like, you have to go to this place because they did this special thing that made my day perfect, right? And the only way that happens is if you have people out there who want to do that and want to provide that experience. So let's talk about now, the clubs themselves and sort of what does greatness actually look like? Both of you obviously run great clubs. You've been to great clubs. What does that look like behind the scenes? Like, it doesn't happen by accident. I think that's clear from what both of you have said so far. It's very intentional. A lot of that has to do with leadership. A lot of that has to do with really tight operations at a golf course. In your eyes, just what makes a club great operationally, not just good? There's lots of good clubs, but what makes a club great operationally?
I think it's the same everywhere I've worked, is that if you can understand, if you can actually switch roles, I don't saying get the other side of the desk, I don't know if that's the right terminology in golf, but to actually understand it from a golfer's perspective. So Bert and I have had some amazing experiences playing pretty much all over the world. And when you go away and you see how you're treated, when you come back to your club, you go, right, if I was a member or I was a guest of a member coming in today, how would I want to feel? We always talk about, you sometimes remember what somebody said, you sometimes remember what you did, but you always remember how someone, or in this case, how a golf club makes you feel. So I think from my perspective, it's always trying to imagine myself as the member or the guest. And we're golf guys. Bert and I are both golf guys. Sometimes GMs come from hospitality. superintendents as well, controllers, or golf people. We are golf people. And I think that's why hopefully we're regarded as round pegs and round holes. We're in the right roles because we want the golf experience to feel exactly the way we would want it if we were the member of the guest. And if you can get your head round that and make sure that every touch point, whether it's when they get to the gate, whether it's when they go to the locker room, they walk on the first tee, they go to the halfway house, they're on the range, when they finish, as they're leaving even before and even afterwards, what's the communication like to a guest that's coming to play? What's the fabric that they get to, so that they're excited about where they're going and they're not walking in the opposite thinking, well, I don't know anything about this place. What's this going to be like? They're actually excited about it. So it's for me, it's about trying to get on the other side of it, understand what that looks like, what it feels like, and then work towards that.
It's easy as that. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. There's and to be fair, John is 100% right. And I think that, as much as I don't spend any time really with John anymore, we still have the same beliefs. And it's funny because you talk about great golf clubs, and I've got a notepad in front of me just for other stuff. But, if you said to me, I could actually physically name members of staff at 10 golf clubs in the world that I've been to once or twice, purely because the service was great. So, like, if I said to you, we're going to Medina, I go, you need to see Vito in the locker room. He is the locker room attendant who served me beers while we're in the sauna. And that's pretty cool. You turn around and you go, you need to speak to Brett down at Isleworth in Florida, because Brett's always going to make sure everything's okay. I remember my clubs didn't turn up and he was like, Bert, you're playing member guest, use my clubs for the day. But there's different clubs all over the world. And it doesn't matter. I mean, Eric Johnson was the same at Oakmont. Eric would have, let you stay in his house, would have taken you to a Penguins game. You look at the boys down at Valderrama, they do the exact same. So, and these are all, top 50 in the world golf clubs. But the fact that we're not always talking about the GM, we're talking about the front-facing pro, locker room attendant, front of house person. There you go, Cypress Point. But
not bad. Not bad flex right there.
And that's the deal. And again, ultimately, it's just making. And I'm not a member at any one of those clubs, but I've been a guest, but made to feel like I'm a member. To the point where some of my best and longest relationships in golf are clubs that I visited as a guest that I've ended up, still in contact with them on a weekly, daily basis. Which is scary to think, but that's how small the golf world is, especially once you get into that echelon of top 50 clubs in the world, top 100 clubs in the world. So yeah, it's funny, and I do, the beliefs are the exact same as John there, without doubt.
Yeah. I'm gonna need y'all to disagree on something. We're just gonna need a hot take.
The interesting thing was I put that up there because back in February, first week in February, I did a trip to California and I played at the Cal Club, I played at Olympic, went to Pebble to watch the last round with Rory winning, played Cypress, passed at the Emco, then went down to Palm Springs. Now,
wait a minute,
the top club.
John, is this the man that doesn't play any golf?
Well, it's to get the occasional thing. But the crazy thing was we go to Cypress Point, which is always regarded as maybe number one, certainly in the top 2 or 3 in the world all the time. It's probably got the best assets. The golf course is unbelievable. The clubhouse is amazing. It's not overly big because it's got a small membership. The whole ambience is right. The assets are amazing. But yet when we finished and we went round to Spanish Bay for lunch, we all sat down, all industry people, there's 4 of us, and we said, so what did we all think? And the first thing we said was the staff are amazing.
Yeah.
So and I know the guy there. I know Casey, that's the GM, the head pro. I know another couple of guys. It's actually a good friend of mine, Dean Robertson's going to be the Walker Cup captain there in September. I know Dean, and it was like we were home, and they couldn't have made us feel better. And in many ways, they didn't need to do that because they've got the best club, they've got the best asset. We could have felt like, are we maybe getting involved here where we shouldn't be allowed here? Not at all. They made us feel so welcome, and again, these little things and touches and. But you can't put a price in them, I don't think.
So let's, we talked a little bit about visiting other clubs. So I want to spend some time there. I asked this question to a lot of people who are, very talented in a field. Like, taste is something that, like, we're really unpacking in all of this, is like sort of knowing the difference between what's good and not, and being able to sort of have the criteria. Obviously, it's incredibly subjective. People have different opinions on it, but it is sort of 0 or 1. Like, you either have taste or you don't have taste. And so as people who run clubs, when you go to another club, what's something that you notice that someone else might not, that you know is either like really going well or really going poorly? Like, kind of unpack how you evaluate when you visit a club.
I mean, we've talked about staff. I mean, ultimately it comes down to the welcome. Are you met? I mean, look, if you're going to a top 100 club in the world, the American service is always, and Canadian service is always regarded as the best service in the world. If you were to do that level of service, and we did it at Loch Lomond, then you stick out like a sore thumb. But it's expected in the US that you're met, your clubs are taken. I think that, all of that all of the initial touch points, whether it's, you're met at the first tee, how was the starter? Did he explain the golf course? How was the halfway hut? To me, I think halfway huts, I mean, I could tell you about all of the halfway huts and the iconic food. Everybody has something that's fairly synonymous, whether it's the cheese at Medina, it's the lychee martini, it's the whatever it is. Every golf club has something, and you want to be part of that. You want to taste it, try it, feel it. But I think it's just that whole experience. I think, like, as industry people, I don't think you would go, if you went to another golf club and didn't pick up one or two ideas, you've walked in completely blind. Now, whether they're attainable to roll out at Spey Bay, they're not. But like, we hide bottles, and John wouldn't do this, but like, we hide bottles of whiskey on the golf course for people to have a free drink, as long as, and they leave it there, they take a selfie. But like, did we come up with that? We didn't. It's at the Sprinkler Heads over in the US, but it's a pretty cool thing. We have the fire pit. We don't have rules on a Wednesday night. So tonight we've got, I know there's 2 7-balls teeing off tonight in the men's game. And again, would you do that at a typical Scottish golf club or a UK club? To turn around and think that you're playing in a 7-ball? Honestly, you would be chased down the first fairway. But there's certain things we can get away with, and certain things John will get away with that we couldn't do. So I think that's what sets you apart.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can't disagree with, or I wouldn't disagree, but I completely concur exactly what Bert's saying. What I would say about, if you go as a guest, so when we go although we're maybe industry, we might know the GM or the head pro somewhere, or there's an introduction that's been done that's allowing us to play, we go as a guest. And I always try and see, how am I being treated as a guest compared to maybe a member that's with me or on the table next to me or on the practice ground next to me? And I think that was always an important thing we did at Loch Lomond, because it was pretty expensive for members to bring guests on, as it is at St George's. It's very expensive for a member to bring a guest on. But at Loch Lomond, we knew that there was guests that were coming that could be literally billionaires, and there might be a guest that was a postman in Glasgow, and a Glasgow member at Loch Lomond just wanted to thank his postman and brought him out for the day. And some of those people that would come to Loch Lomond, they would never be there again. They're never going to be a member. But we wanted to make sure that when they went back out onto the main road, the A82, to head off, when they were driving away from Loch Lomond, and this is the exact same at St George's, and I know Bert will do the same at Spey Bay, is that when they leave the club, we want them to go, wow, what a day. How was I treated? I was made to feel. I've had the opposite. I've been a guest at a club where I felt I was a guest and maybe I shouldn't be there. Am I going to want to go back? Doesn't matter how good the golf course is. I probably don't want to go back. So I think making sure that everybody's treated the same, and that's with your membership as well, because again, at Loch Lomond, everybody had to be, as at St George's, most people have to be reasonably well off to be a member. But even within the membership, there are varying different levels of how deep their pockets are. Everyone should be the exact same. Everyone's a member, get the same experience.
What's something that, and Bert, you kind of mentioned this with the hidden bottle. What's something that you've just sort of ripped off from another club? Like, you went to the club and you were like, oh yeah, we're going to do that. And you just like immediately applied it.
90% of what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit and blow smoke up. Every idea we have, like, we've got our member guest. We did it at Loch Lomond. We've got the Ryder Cup. Okay, we're copying the Ryder Cup. So like, the event package that we offer is not seen at another golf club other than 6 or 10 in the UK. So our event package is what I'm used to. So we've ripped that off. Our scorecards, our new scorecards that have just been released, they look great, but I would love to take the credit from it, but I'm not going to lie. It's a rip-off of an Isleworth scorecard mixed with a Medina scorecard mixed with a Cyprus scorecard, because they're all the features that I like. But again, I think that ultimately, this podcast is talking about GMs and what they do differently. I think it's how they adapt all of the little things that they find and see and bring it in and make it their own. We've talked about our halfway hut food. And to be fair, we've talked about the cheese at Medina, lychee martini and burgers and sausage rolls. This weekend we're rolling out our own sausage roll. So it's our own sausage meat with black pudding. It's a black pudding sausage roll. And again, it doesn't sound much, but you can only get it here.
Yeah.
I know, John, it's particularly good, John. I'm not going to lie. There was extensive testing went on.
Will it travel across the Atlantic? No, that's the question. I mean, come on.
But then, and even our own lager. So, how many golf clubs have their own lager? And a golf club like Spey Bay, should we be in a position that we have our own lager? Probably not. We are an entry-level golf club right now that we're building towards, but we have our own lager. We have our own gin. We're working towards, our own product on the golf course. So there's things that we're doing now that are pushing boundaries, even for golf clubs that are established in Scotland, never mind are 1.5 years in. So, yeah, I mean, how many ideas do I rip off? Every day there's something that we will adapt to make it look like it's ours.
But that's kind of,
John's
like
the same.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I can't wait to hear what his answers are, because I'm sure he's doing the same thing. But to John's point earlier about sort of being a conductor, I think a lot about music. I love music, and it's whether it's comedy, whether it's food, whatever else. That's what great sort of artists do, right? There's the cliche of great artists steal or whatever, but part of that taste mechanism, we talked a lot in the last podcast with Seth McWhorter, who did our logo. We talked a lot about what makes a great golf club's brand is first and foremost understanding who they are. What is your identity culturally? And then it just becomes, how do you best express that through a logo or best express that through a brand? I think everyone though has to borrow. When Seth's talking about making logos, he's talking about reference points. He's sketching something. He's Googling images to sort of get a sense of what he wants to do. And it's really no different than what you just described. We shouldn't feel ashamed for that. It's just this is something that we can try out. I think one of the best things about Spey Bay is that you get to try out a lot of these things. And I'm sure some of them work really well and some of them don't work really well. There's not this, we have to stick to this, tradition that has existed for 200 years and we cannot change it, right? John, what about you? What's something that, you've gone to another club and you've just been so impressed by that you wanted to take, and maybe even something that didn't work, right? You tried it at your club and it was all right, yeah, this just doesn't work at ours.
Well, I tell you, Greg, I'm going to answer the question slightly differently, because I think everything that Bert said is spot on. Plagiarism, it's not a dirty word. Some of us have built careers on it. But what I would say is that what we try and do, or what I try and do, is I try and look out with the golf industry, because it's very easy to say, yeah, we've got a world-class golf course. We talk about ourselves being a world-class club, but what's our food and beverage experience like? We're in that massive metropolitan city. Toronto's the 4th largest city in North America. Not a lot of people know that. And there's every style of restaurant you can think of in the city, which is 25 minutes from here, 20 minutes. So how good can we make our food and beverage? How can we, not just in the clubhouse, but on the golf course? We've got food stations, we put peaked ovens out there, we do tacos, we do all sorts of things. So there's that. How do we communicate with our members? Are we the best communicators in the golf industry? I don't know if we are, but let's compare ourselves to, what style of newsletter, how easy is it to read it in your mobile, your tablet? So we look at things that are not just in the golf industry. It is important to benchmark yourself in the golf industry, but why not go to other industries that maybe do things that we do, then do them even better, and can we learn from that? The partnership we have. So I think we shouldn't just limit ourselves to be the best in the golf market. We should, and that's exactly what Bert's talking about, whether it's food and beverage, customer service. You can learn, let's be really good in the golf industry, but let's compare ourselves to the other industries and let's see if we can learn from them. Let's steal their ideas as well as the golf ideas.
That's great. And I think that sort of leads into this next section where, a lot of this, I think, is, I really like, studies in comparison and contrast, right? I think we've talked a lot about just the it seems like there's definitely a shared mentality between the two of you of sort of like what it takes to do a great club, right? And I think like one of the things that I am interested in unpacking is some of the differences that just sort of exist either culturally, geographically, expectation wise between Scottish clubs and North American clubs, right? Like when we taught, like the first time I went to Scotland and when we bought a Scottish golf course, the sort of the first thing that really stands out being from the United States is that great country clubs in the United States are very exclusive places, right? You can only get there if you're a guest or if you have a ton of money. You have no idea what happens behind the curtain, and they're very privileged places to be, right? The thing that I loved about Scotland immediately is that, you know, even though Spey Bay is a member club, it's also open to the public. Visitors are welcome. They can show up, they can play. And I love that atmosphere. But I'm sure there's also other similarities and differences just that sort of exist because they're in different places. So I think maybe you start at a high level. What are the major differences? And it doesn't have to be Spey Bay or St. George's, but what are the major differences between North American and Scottish clubs?
I think the touch point's the service point. You know, so that when you arrive, when you go in the locker room, the bag drop, the first tee, I think the other thing is, and it's it's very interesting in Canada, and probably when I say North America, the northern part of the US as well, because it's very seasonal. A lot more seasonal in Scotland. Like you can play golf at Spey Bay, and a good day you're out there 12 months of the year playing golf. Now we get to the middle of November, second Sunday in November, the course always closes, and can be as early as late November. There's snow, but whenever we start to get snow, that's us. We could have snow on the ground till the end of March, and we never open the course till the middle of April. So you're talking a good 5 months, sometimes 6, where there's no golf. So that 6 months that we're open it's got to be spot on. It's a short season. We've got to, like, we've only been open we've been open now. It's coming up for 4 weeks, and the greens are already running over 11 in the stimp, and they will be like that all season. And the golf course 7 days a week, whether you're playing on a Monday. Well, we don't open till 11 on a Monday because there's a maintenance window on a Monday morning. But a Monday afternoon, a Wednesday is men's league, a women's on Thursday, the weekend. The golf course needs to be great 7 days a week, and I think that's just like, and that costs money. You know, because we do have the head count to do it. We need to get a full team in the weekends, food and beverage as well. We're trying to offer that. We get breakfast, lunches, dinners. Members can do events at the club. It's the levels of consistency 7 days a week. I think there's a higher expectation, and that comes with a price tag. And then, as I said earlier, we're in a big metropolitan city. It's interesting, if you put a pin in the ground here, within an hour's drive, there's 10 million people. Now, we're only looking for 600 members. We're not looking for 10 million customers. Let's get it right. Let's price it at a point that still offers value for money. I think that's a very similar thing between Scotland, in fact, the UK and North America. We're actually offering value for money. Yes, we maybe charge more, but actually the value for money that people perceive in it is the key indicator. And if we can get that right, that's when the similarities come together.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, you're all freezing there. Are you okay? Yeah, I mean, I think that we've got two baskets of memberships. We have the local member that's here 4 days a week. You know, I've got members that if I don't see 5 days a week, you're almost ringing them going, "Are you okay?" Because they're here every day, and that's great. But then we have the international member that makes us one trip of the year. You have the international member that comes once every other year. So we have that kind of diverse thing. And as John quite rightly says, we have to keep our eye on the ball, because if you're only coming once every 2 years, that experience needs to be the same as it is for the guy that's here 5 days a week. Now, in fairness, the guy that's here 5 days a week sounds really daft, but and it's funny, and I remember talking about this, I think it was to John actually, or when we were at Loch Lomond, is the guy that's here every day probably doesn't notice if something's out of place, and probably doesn't pick up on, you know, tables dirty or whatever. Whereas the guy that's here for once a year picks up on that, and you know, he almost thinks that is the level that we operate on a day-to-day basis, which is not. So I think that you have to be very alert, and that's why, you know, I talked about first impressions. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, as far as where Spey Bay is pitched, John's only looking for 600 out of 10 million. I don't have 600 houses in the area here. If everybody was home and the cats and brothers and sisters and dogs and everybody was in, I'd be lucky if there's 150 people in the village. So from that point of view, we're competing against other golf clubs and other golf clubs at similar price points. So we have to look at, for Spey Bay, we have to look at what can we do better than anybody else to make them come over, whether that's the condition of the golf course. And obviously, look, we're putting more money into this golf course than anybody in this area combined. So we know that we're attracting people in that way. But I think the fact of, at any level, whether you're paying £100,000 initiation fees or you're paying £100 initiation fee, you want to have value for money. And it's the same as if you went out for dinner. If you have a good steak, you don't really care what you pay for it, as long as it's good. But, if you pay $5 and the steak's like tough as old boots, you paid $5 too much. Mm-hmm. So, and I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I think ultimately it's the value for money that we offer. And we offer more than just golf. We're offering the ability to play 1,400 golf clubs in Europe. So if you're traveling, so we have a lot of members down in the Central Belt that maybe only come up once a year, but travel a little bit to Spain or Portugal or further around, and they can get value for money by being a member in Spey Bay and not really play it. We've got 32 members just now that are from Castle Rock over in my previous golf club that have never been here because they go to Spain and Portugal and they use their membership properly and they get discounts. And then as part of the whole Links brand, you then have options to buy merchandise and products and everything else that you see. But I think it's just that value for money and how it's perceived. Our green fees and membership fees are very similar to a lot of golf clubs in the area, but I think that we offer a better membership experience and value for money that they would be then copying us, if that's, and that's been brutally honest.
Totally. What's something that your members expect that would feel just totally foreign at the other club? That just like it wouldn't translate between Scotland and North America.
I think if I told, what's the walking? What do you walk and play, John, or a cart play?
I tell you, it's interesting here because again, I think we go back to being this. We're number 2 club at the moment. We're ranked in Canada, number 1 private because Cabot's got number 1, number 3 out in Nova Scotia. And it's all about the golf experience. So we're now down at 30% drive and 70% walk, which is fantastic. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that number. There's less and less people driving, and we encourage that. And we've got walkways through the roughs and all sorts of things. So, but yeah, I mean that is a difference because there's 1 or 2 courses back in the UK that are designed with carbs because it's about creating revenue, as you know, Bert. A lot of the time, that's why they do it. But, I mean, that's a really good question. What would the difference be? I don't think there's huge differences. I actually don't. There's scales, there's levels of what you're experiencing and things. I'll tell you the one thing that everybody really, really wants, and it's the exact same in both areas, is recognition. A member walks in, they want to know that the person behind the bar or on the first tee or the backdrop knows who they are, knows their name, maybe knows a little bit about them, knows they've been away for the winter in Florida or Arizona or wherever it's been. They want to know, and it used to be the same at Loch Lomond, and that's a challenge, as Bert says, because if somebody only came to Loch Lomond or even Spey Bay now, Bert, when somebody comes once a year, every 2 years, you want them when they walk in to feel like they've come home again.
Absolutely.
And that, and if you can create that great engagement, listen, we've got members in the 6 months that we're open, which is call it 180 days, that'll play 120 times. They'll be out here that often. And then there's members that come 4 or 5 times a year and they stay local. Yeah. But they want the same recognition. They want to know, they want to feel engaged. So, and I think engagement must be massive for you guys as well, because if they're not coming to Spey Bay that often, how do they still feel a member? And I'm sure you're very good at doing that, across the whole organisation.
Yeah, well, sure. Look, there's Gregory had his hole-in-one the other day at.
I didn't have it. It wasn't me. It was somebody else. But I watched it.
You watched the hole-in-one.
Yeah.
But I think that John, you're 100% right. I mean, I think the profiling of members is the next level for us. I mean, I think what we did at Loch Lomond was exceptionally well. That everybody had a profile. You almost asked like the 5 or 6 basic questions that you knew when somebody came in. And I'm going to read somebody. Well, I remember somebody's profile, and John's going to laugh because he'll know exactly who it is. But he wants tea, he wants burnt toast, he only wants chicken, he likes mayonnaise. And I'm saying this, and John's going to say, oh, and he'll give you the name. But like,
it's JBD.
it's JBD. So, but the thing is, that's the level where all golf clubs need to get to. Especially, the higher up the food chain you go. You're top 100 in the world. If you're not doing that, I think you should be losing places, if I'm being brutally honest, because that's the level that the members expect. I know when I walk into Isleworth, and I'm not a member. I'm not a member. I've been there a lot and I've played there a lot, but I still have an Iron Brew sitting in my locker because they know that's what I drink. Like, they know that I play with Pro V1 balls, and then there's normally Pro V1s there. They know that I'm useless for having golf tees, so there's always extra golf tees in my golf cart. But I'm not a member, and they're profiling their visitors. That's the level that golf, that's what separates good and great and exceptional for me. But again, it still comes back to, good customer service and good staff.
Sure.
Well, there's one really quick story. Well, it might not be that quick with me, but it's a quick story about when we were at Loch Lomond. There used to be a family came across from New York, and they would come across at least once a year, sometimes twice, and they always brought the two kids, the two boys, which were teenagers, and sometimes they brought one set of grandparents with them. So they would have 3 rooms. They would get picked up at the airport. They would stay at the club for at least maybe 5-6 nights. They would play golf every day. They would use the spa. They would dine at the club, lunch, dinner. They would spend, without getting into numbers, an awful lot of money. And at the end of the trip, sometimes it was me, sometimes it was Bert. But the member would always ask to play golf with one of us sometimes. And normally at the end of the trip, he would give you the whole lowdown on how the trip went and what was working well, what wasn't. And it was actually really good feedback. Some of it was very detailed. This person had that profile. It was very interesting to read. The whole family did. But at the end of one of the trips, the gentleman we're out playing, he said to me, John, he said, this is the best trip I've ever had to Loch Lomond. And I was like, wow. And I said, what was the standout point? Now, you're at a 600-acre estate with a house that dates back to the mid to late 18th century. You've got a world-class golf course, a world-class bar, Range Rovers that pick people up from the airport. It's world-class all it means. And the thing that made his trip was that when he flew across from New York overnight, the next morning, he went into Spike's Bar on his own. He ordered a cup of coffee. He wanted a cappuccino. He ordered the cappuccino. The girl brought the cappuccino over and he said, excuse me, can I get a sweetener, please? And I won't say his name, but the person behind the bar said, it's already in, the sweetener's already in your cappuccino. He should remember that he picked sweeteners in his cappuccino. Now, this guy had spent a lot of money, well in it. Figures on his trip, and I don't know, a 20 pence, 10, 15 cent sweetener made him feel at home on his first day. And so again, I use that story a lot with staff to say we can influence things. It's not always the big things that make it so great. Sometimes it's just those little touches, that recognition, that thing that makes you feel, talking about feel again, makes you feel at home, makes you feel a member. And everybody can influence that, whether you work an 8-hour shift or whether you're full-time and you've worked here for 30 years. Everybody's got a piece of the jigsaw they can make that experience.
I mean, a big thing that I just keep hearing from both of you is it's just, that's the perfect story because it's not an expensive touch. And obviously these things add up. And, if you had that at a place that had terrible greens and a terrible golf course, then we're probably having a different conversation. But sometimes it just comes down to like good old-fashioned giving a shit, and when you have a choice between, like maybe I'm having a tough day, I'm going to let it slip a little bit, I'm not going to go that extra mile. It makes a huge difference in someone's experience with the club. And even for people who have a ton of money and can buy whatever they want at any moment in time, it's those little things that still stand out to them, to your point, because it's not really expected, right? They're expected not necessarily getting their way and having to ask for something, but being able to predict or being able to listen makes a huge difference. So maybe like kind of to wrap up this section, and then I want to kind of just get into some rapid fire questions, more a little bit, kind of fun questions. Obviously the memberships are different, right? One still is, you have 600 members. I'm sure there's a wait list, John. I'm sure it's expensive to join. How does that impact just like the culture of the club, like differently from, if someone wants to join Spey Bay, they can do so. If someone wants to play Spey Bay, they can do so. I probably will never play St. George's in my life, and this is not me fishing for an invitation. But, so like, how does that matter, I guess, or like how does that impact the day-to-day culture of the club, I guess, is what I'm curious about, because that's the thing that stands out the most, I think, when I've talked to people about this episode. They're like, oh well, the club, they're so different, right? Because think of like even more polar opposites. You have like Cullen and Augusta National, like they couldn't be any more different, but we've talked about so much about the similarities, and I think that's great, and that's what matters about providing experience, because Cullen provides a great experience for golf, and obviously Augusta National provides a great experience in many different ways. But sort of kind of, are there any major differences that stem from the fact that it's a smaller private membership versus a local but also global club?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, the similarities to start off with are a passion for golf and a passion for a member's experience, a passion for camaraderie, networks, meeting new people, playing 18 holes, but then sitting having a few beers, reaching out, going to Scotland. When our members go to Scotland, they've now got lots of contacts at lots of clubs. There'll be lots of them. I will be promoting it hell out of it. Go to Spey Bay and go and see Bert, because I know they're going to get looked after. And I also know that if Bert's coming across here and he's going to bring you, Greg, you're going to play St. George's. So that side of it. The difference is, I don't think it's interesting, because what I would say is that there's the cultural things that are actually very similar. Is the price point make it different? You will have some amazing members that are probably very, very wealthy at Spey Bay. It might not be that expensive to join, but they want that culture, they want that feel. At St. George's, we've got a lot of legacy. We've got, I can go down on a Friday night, people are having dinner on the upper veranda. She's just opened, and there'll be 3 generations of membership sitting together. We're very diverse, because Toronto's a very diverse city. It's not that it's difficult to become a member, but the other side of it is we've got a big wait list. It's probably going to be 9 or 10 years for somebody to get in here. So it tends to be that existing members are the proposers and the seconders, and they're going to bring in friends, family, work colleagues. So it tends to stay in a pretty straight lane with us. But I think the passion for golf is the common denominator. And when you get people that are passionate for golf, it doesn't matter whether you're a billionaire or you're not. And everybody can go out and enjoy themselves and respect each other.
Absolutely. But look, there's tonight. My young son, Callum, he's playing in the men's game tonight. He's 13. So he's playing, and I looked at the draw tonight. The guys have already done it. So he's 13. He's playing with a 32-year-old. And I'm going to say Alfie, because I don't even know how old Alfie is. I think he'd be one of those guys who'd be hard to put an age on. But there's the 3-ball. Does Alfie, in his twilight of his years, shall we say, really want to be playing with a 13-year-old? Well, he's the one that set up the game, because he's like, we need to encourage this, and it's all about having fun. And, it's almost giving back to the game, if that makes sense. That, he's like, look, I was that young kid once at a golf club and maybe felt a bit out of place or unsure or whatever. And I think everything like that transpires across. I mean, we've all been that young kid in the locker room, unsure what we can and can't do. At the end of the day, we all wanted to be that Tiger Woods or Nick Faldo or whoever it was back in the day. And I think you just have to find your own course with it. But John, sorry.
Yeah, and there you go. You think Gregory, we've been talking about this before, but when it comes to junior golf, we've got just about 100 junior members here. We have an amazing junior program. We have one pro that's dedicated to it, does an amazing job. We close the tee on a Tuesday afternoon, so when all the kids are finished school, they come over and the tees. That's it. Kids on a Tuesday afternoon, they get the run of the golf course. We do the indoor stuff in the winter. We set up local inter-club matches. There's the communication app. We've got an Instagram closed page, and all the video stuff goes on there, and the parents can access it. And so again, it's there's actually an awful lot of similarities. You might look at clubs like ours and think, no, they're very different. Maybe if you looked on the outside, you might think they are. If you actually looked on the inside, they'd be very similar. Certainly the principles and the culture that's associated would be pretty similar.
Great. Well,
it's funny because we didn't. When I first walked in here, we had 3 junior members. We, over the last month, have had a huge push trying to get new juniors into golf. So we're now sitting with 68 juniors, all under the age of 16. And on a Wednesday night, that is the plan, that we're going to close the golf course at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night so they can come down after school. We're turning the first into a driving range, so the new ones can hit some balls, rest them, go out and play. And then we're running our junior medals on a Saturday to coincide with the main. And again, it's just building that kind of the fun element. But I mean, there's 68 new kids. They've all got a parent or a grandparent or a mum or a dad or an auntie or an uncle that are going to come down. They may be not into golf, but they'll sit and have tea and coffee sitting on the bench outside. And before you know it, that's where, for us, that's where our membership grows. And our membership for juniors is so cheap. Like, it's not, a round of drinks would be cheaper than a membership. Like, we charge £15 for a junior member under the age of 16. So it's more, let's get them here having fun. A round of drinks for 4 people, it should be more than £16 anyway. Or it would be if I was with John.
Sure.
A couple of pints of terrace.
Absolutely. Well, I'm surprised. We kind of wrap up. I think my goal of each of these episodes is to sort of drill it down to kind of one takeaway. And I think one of the best parts about having conversations like this is that I'm kind of leaving surprised. It sounds like, what you hear isn't necessarily true, at least not from the inside. It's like, number one, you have to be committed to being excellent. It sounds very easy to say, right? But execution's wildly different. And number two is you have to have the right people in place, and they have to be inspired to be able to provide an experience that is relative to the value, right? But is great and memorable. So I think that's a great takeaway. Obviously for us is like, we have a digital membership at LinksDAO, and that's something that I think that, that we can certainly learn from and certainly do more of. All right, so let's just do some rapid fire. I'm just going to ask 9 questions, and we'll just get through this real quick. And I'm curious to some of your answers on these. So, number 1, what's your favorite hole at your respective course and why?
Oh, George's has got so many great holes. Very, very quickly. Oh my God! Our 6th little par 3 from the back tee, we can get it to 225, and from the front tee, it's 85 yards. We played both tees in the club championship last year, and the stroke average over both days was virtually the exact same. So 85 yards to 225, and it's played the same stroke average.
Great.
That's a rapid fire answer there for John.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. I really like the 11th hole at Spey Bay. I think it's a good driving hole. Second hole, kind of like a little pit of a green mound coming in from the left-hand side and the ocean views. I do think that that's going to change, though, if I'm being honest. I think that the new complex that we've opened up at the 4th, so the new 4th hole is going to be 120 yards. I think it's going to be a spectacular little par 3, changing from what was 195. And I think that also the new 5th tee, playing to the reverse 3rd at the highest point. John, I know, but
How many holes are you coming up with here? He said your favourite one, not your favourite 9.
I appreciate that, but I think that so I'm going for the current day. I think that the 11th, but for Saturday, I think we're going the 4th.
Okay, like it. What's the one, and it could be for whatever reason, but like, what's the one job at your club that you'd swap with? And let's just like take salary out of the equation, but just like day to day, what's one thing that you'd want to do? Let's just say for like a month.
It's about the job, but it's more about the person. There's a guy out that does our front of house like concierge. It's not really golf, it's clubhouse. His name's Sefton, and he's just a lovely little guy. He's been here a number of years, all the members, and he's just a busybody, and he knows everybody, what they're looking for, who they're meeting, the guests coming, he welcomes them. And I just love his attitude, and that he makes that job look so attractive. I don't think I could do it anywhere near as good as him. But because of that, and he meets me every morning when I come in, and we always chat about things. And so Sefton in the front of house greeter, you could call him. Great guy, great job.
It's a job I've actually done. I would actually just like to go out and cut greens. To be honest, I think it's a great job. I did it with David early season, and even at Castle Rock I've done it. And being in early in the morning, speaking to the greens boys, I think it's a huge connection for general manager and obviously agronomy, but I actually quite enjoy cutting greens. So put me on a moor with some headphones and a nice sunny day.
Great. All right, one word answer here: walk or ride. You got one round. You walking or riding?
Okay.
Walking.
Okay. I'm not surprised by that answer. I would also choose walking. What's a club policy that you would just scrap tomorrow if you could? You just like delete it, doesn't exist anymore.
I'm pretty lucky. We don't have a board like John will have, so I'm not going to lie. I'm very fortunate that at Spey Bay most of the rules are made by me, so any of the rules I'd be scrapping. The only rule in golf I would change is if you land in a divot, I would love to take your ball out of a divot free of charge. That's
Great.
the only thing I would do.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that, Bert.
Finally,
Wait,
they disagree on something.
You got to play it as long as it's part of the game. It's a skill to be able to hit it out of the divot.
But John, you're only saying that because you never hit a fairway. You're normally in the woods or in the water.
Well, I don't have as many fairways as you. A rule that I would change, maybe. It's not that. It's an overall rule. I don't really like. There's certain times certain people can play, and maybe it's not really about juniors, but if you're playing in this and you can't do that, I just open the tee sheet and then they can play whenever they want. And if you want to bring guests and they tee off first, or you do it, you know what? And actually, I think it would probably level itself and it would find where it needs to be. We don't have a huge issue with that. In fact, our access is great on the first tee. But in clubs in general, I don't agree that there's times that people can play and others can't and stuff. Just let everyone go out and play, and it'll find it's a level playing field.
Favorite golf course that's not your own golf course?
I need to give you two. Because I'm going to go back to Scotland and I'm going to give you an inland golf course and I'll give you a links golf course. In fact, we both worked at Loch Lomond and both Bert and I did it I did it once, maybe twice. I think you came on both trips if we did it twice, Bert. We got to walk with Loch Lomond with Mr. Weisskopf, who designed the golf course. In fact, we played with him as well, Bert. We played with Weisskopf on.
He took a fiver off me.
Oh, I think he did. In fact, I think you owe me a fiver. You still haven't paid for it. But we walked with him for 6 hours, Gregory, and he showed us all the things, and I started to appreciate the design even more. Things that are subtle but actually make such a difference. And because I understood the golf course even more after walking it with Mr. Weisskopf, that would be my inland golf course. My links golf course, at the moment, it could change to Spey Bay, of course, when I come over, is Royal Aberdeen. The front nine in Royal Aberdeen is probably as good as you can play in links golf, and the back nine is also very, very good. It's just that the front nine is exceptional. So that's I've given you two courses, but that's an inland and a links.
Bert, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, as far as links, very fortunate. I think I would go with Royal County Down. Very, very special golf course. It has that kind of rough and ready feel to it. It doesn't, not taking anything away from Portrush, because Portrush is spectacular. Royal County Down, I think I just play better around it, so I enjoy it more. So I'm going Royal County Down. And again, look, Loch Lomond, it's hard to see past that. When I looked at some of the questions were coming up, I would have tossed up between maybe an Oakmont or a Valderrama. But I think just because of the connection that we had there for so many years, I was there, 16 years. So it's a special, special place in fairness. So yeah, there we go.
All right. Haggis or poutine? Had to choose one of those two dishes.
What is poutine, Greg?
Bert's
You haven't had poutine?
Exactly. What is?
This is like the most stereotypical thing ever. It's Canadian, right? It's fries with like the gravy on top and cheese curds and stuff.
And cheese.
Is that not a thing?
It's a big thing, but here's the thing. If I get fresh poutine, probably would choose it. But after about 10, 15 minutes, when it starts to get a little bit soggy, it's not a great thing, really. So, but actually, although I love haggis pakora at Mr. Singh's. Remember haggis pakora?
Unreal.
We used to get to
Satty Singh's.
Oh, yeah, it was an Indian fusion restaurant. He did haggis pakoras, and they were just amazing. So, but I'm sitting in the line here.
I'm definitely going haggis with a few pints of Tenentos.
Great. And then last question is, obviously we're going to keep these episodes going. So in the spirit of wanting to talk to really smart people in golf to unpack what makes a club great, who's someone that you think would come on the podcast that we should have as a guest in the future?
Wow, that's a great start. I mean, rather than say a specific person, I think you need to get a couple of architects on and talk about the design, because It's interesting because without sounding arrogant, I think I know quite a lot about the golf industry. I could never be a golf course designer. I look at blank bits of ground and I can't see it. I look at holes that need to be remodeled. Sometimes you're hearing about it and I wouldn't even go near it because that's not my skill set. I don't have that, whether it's visionary bit in my head. So I think architects would be great to go on. I think the business of golf, depending on how deep you want to go in it, I think, that whether it's at St. George's or whether it's, back in Scotland, which we talked about it earlier, maybe it's slightly different economy, the way that the golf industry works, but we're all under not so much pressure, but we're all getting scrutinized to make sure we're delivering that value for money. So maybe trying to get somebody in that maybe talks about, I think capital investment's massive. You'll begin to do an awful lot at the moment, Bert. You're spending a lot of capital money to get the golf course better, clubhouses better. I think so. Projecting that forward, I think members are very interested in that, especially as the costs go up because they want to know why it's going up. So I'm talking more rather than specific people, maybe industry type people. I think would be very good to talk
to. For me, I'm going the opposite direction. I think that I would bring in a couple of caddies and let's get some stories of on the course, off the course. Obviously, I know we've talked about it in the past, Gregory, but I think a couple of caddies that have had a bit of worldly experience. I think that, at the end of the day, and it's funny because we're not huge on caddy rounds here, but they were so important. And it's, I'm seeing John nodding his head, but, a caddy can make and break a round. Even if the golf course is average, a caddy can actually make the round feel like it's amazing. And they get to spend 4.5 hours. So the amount of money that clubs should be putting into caddies and investing in the caddy programs, they are the face of any golf club. So I think that they can make or break your day. And certainly have done in some of the golf courses I've played. So yeah, I think we should get a couple of caddies in next.
Great idea. I think we should absolutely do that. So let's wrap up. I mean, I think that the key takeaway for me, and it was a surprising one, is really just behind the scenes how much each decision matters and how much you have to care about the impact that it has on members. And that's what makes a great club. I think that's very clear for me from both of you. So just thank you, John. Thank you, Bert, for taking the time. I know different time zones. It's late for you, Bert. It's, early-ish for you, John. So thank you all very much for just taking the time to talk. It's been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. Obviously to learn more, John, there's a great podcast that you did with Top 100 Golf. I think people should definitely listen to that. The St. George's website, I'm sure, is a place. Is there any other place that people should go to learn about you or to learn about your club?
I'm big. I'm not actually, but LinkedIn's where I tend to, speak to people, reach out. I learn a lot from LinkedIn. I think there's some great articles that get written. If anybody wants to, connect with me, follow me on there. And certainly people working in the golf industry. I said it earlier. It's a worldwide business, but it's actually quite a small network, and I'm delighted to enhance my network and by more people getting in contact.
And then Bert, you're Bert MacKay 1 on Instagram, right? And I'll put that in the show notes. Lots of great updates of what's happening every day. A lot of dog photos also, which I'm a huge fan of. You have a great dog. Get to see the life of that dog in the golf course is amazing. And then speybay.com. Any other places people should go to learn about you or the club?
Yeah, again, LinkedIn, I use it a little bit. Probably is not as much as I should. But yeah, absolutely. And on Facebook, I know it's not big in the US, but we would be posting fairly regularly on Facebook just now, especially updates and videos and little clips, and obviously sharing any videos that we create off-site as well.
Perfect. And then to listeners, thank you so much. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, subscribe, share it with someone who loves the game, who's interested in golf clubs. We're really trying to dig deep into these, and this episode is no different. Like, we had a lot of learnings here that I think people are really going to get excited about. So share this out to your friends, give it a listen, give it a like. And if you haven't seen what we're building at Spey Bay, definitely check out speybay.com. We got a bunch of content coming out. Cooper's going to be there this weekend. He's going to shoot some more. First episode in a new series that we are putting out should happen in the next couple of weeks. But definitely check out speybay.com if you want to learn more about becoming a member or visiting the club. So thanks, everybody, for listening. And Bert and John, thanks again for joining.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.